You know that feeling, right? You're scrolling through your banking app at 2 in the morning, totally not a habit, by the way, and you see a number that makes your stomach drop a little. It's not catastrophic, but it's stuck. Like, you've been making decent money for a while now. You're not frivolous with your spending. You're doing all the things you're supposed to do, but somehow there's this invisible ceiling preventing you from actually building real wealth. And the frustrating part? You watch other people who seem to earn the exact same amount as you, and somehow they've already bought property, or they've got this sense of financial momentum you just can't seem to crack. It's like they're playing a different game entirely. My name is Marcus, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, not in a paranoid way, but more like a fascination with why some people seem to effortlessly build wealth while others are grinding their teeth at the exact same income level. And honestly, the deeper I've dug into this, the more I've realized there's usually one specific moment, one specific thing that separates the people who stay financially stuck from the people who actually escape it. It's not about earning more. It's not even about spending less, though that helps. It's something most people actually do, just not at the right time, in the right way, with the right mindset. And if you've done it once, even accidentally, you've basically already doubled your financial trajectory compared to people who haven't. That's what we're exploring today, because once you understand what this is, you'll start seeing it everywhere. In your friends' lives, in your own decisions, and more importantly, you'll understand why doing this one thing changes literally everything. Let me paint you a picture here, because I think you'll recognize yourself in it. Someone makes, let's say, $50,000 a year. They're not broke, they've got a job, they're relatively stable, and they're probably thinking they're doing fine. But at the end of the month, most of that is gone. Rent, utilities, food, maybe a car payment, subscriptions they forgot they had. They get paid, money flows in, money flows out, and the net result is basically nothing. Or maybe a few $100 if they're lucky and didn't have any unexpected expenses. And this repeats month after month, year after year. The salary might go up by $1,000 or $2, but the lifestyle quietly inflates right alongside it. Slightly nicer apartment, slightly better car, a few more expensive hobbies, and suddenly you're making $70,000 and you're still broke. It sounds funny when you say it out loud, but it's real, and it's heartbreaking because it's so common. The worst part isn't the current situation, it's that this creates a psychological trap. You start to believe that wealth is just something that happens to other people, people with trust funds, people who got lucky, people in tech or finance. Not you, not someone with a normal salary and a normal job. And that belief becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because it stops you from even trying. But here's the thing that breaks that cycle. And this is what's wild. Most people have actually already experienced the mechanism that creates wealth. They just don't recognize it, and they definitely don't repeat it intentionally. Think about a time in your life when you've moved, or changed jobs, or had some kind of major shift. Maybe you moved back with your parents for a few months. Maybe you got a roommate situation. Maybe there was some unexpected constraint on your spending. And in that period, something strange happened. Despite not actually changing your income, you suddenly had money. Not a lot, maybe, but actual money that accumulated. You finished the month with something extra, maybe several somethings extra. That's not luck. That's not complicated. That's literally just an experiment in what happens when your expenses drop below your income, which, when you think about it, should be obvious. But somehow, it's not obvious until you've lived it. It's like you need to taste it once to even believe it's possible. Here's where it gets interesting, because this is where most people completely miss the lesson. When that expense reduction period ends, they almost always go back to the old pattern. The temporary constraint disappears, and so does the discipline. They think, okay, that was nice, that little burst of saving, but now I can get a better place, or go back to normal, or treat myself because I earned it, and the cycle resets. The surplus evaporates. They're back to feeling broke by month end. But the people who actually do become wealthy, they do something different. They don't immediately inflate their lifestyle back to where it was, or more accurately, they inflate it partially. They upgrade something. Maybe they do get the nicer apartment, but not by the full amount they were spending saved.
They intentionally keep a chunk of that surplus flowing, even as life gets more comfortable. I know this guy, right? Let's call him David. David was making decent money, but was completely stuck in that paycheck-to-paycheck trap we talked about. Then his company went remote, and suddenly he didn't need to live in the expensive city center. He moved to a suburb, cut his rent in half, and for the first time in years, he finished a month with $3,000 extra. Not $400, $3,000. He was shocked. Now here's what 98% of people do. They go, "Great, I'm finally ahead." And then they start thinking about what they can buy or upgrade with that freedom. But David did something different. He kept living in the suburb. His rent stayed low. And here's the key part, and this is what separates people. He didn't spend that surplus. He didn't put it in some investment account. He just didn't spend it. It accumulated. And then a few months later, he had $15,000. That's wealth accumulation, honestly. That's the mechanism turning on. The year after that, he got a raise. Normal salary bump, nothing crazy. But here's what's critical. Because he'd already proven to himself that he could live on the lower amount, that raise actually became his. Most people get a raise and don't even notice it because they just start spending the extra. David got a raise and kept that same spending level, so the raise became additional surplus. That's the compounding that actually creates generational wealth. It's not that he was earning crazy money, it's that he'd basically locked in a spending level below his income and left room for raises and growth to actually accumulate. That's the moment. That's when he became 2x ahead of someone making the same salary who never had that experience. Now, you might be thinking, this seems simple enough, why doesn't everyone just do it? And that's the question that keeps me up at night, honestly, because the answer is actually pretty dark. It's not ignorance, it's not lack of discipline really, though that's part of it. It's that we're wired to normalize our lifestyle the moment it stops hurting. When you're eating rice and beans because that's all you can afford, your brain registers scarcity. It's uncomfortable. But the moment you can afford better, there's this immediate pull, almost like a psychological rebound, where you want to feel that comfort. You want to prove to yourself that you've made it, that you've escaped the scarcity. And spending money on nicer things is one of the fastest ways to feel that sense of success. It's why someone who spent 5 years broke will often make worse financial decisions once they start making real money than someone who grew up with it. There's this urgency, almost a desperation to enjoy it. I see it all the time. But here's what's fascinating. The people who naturally become wealthy seem to have accidentally stumbled into a different psychological framework. They experienced that constraint period, and you know what I think makes the difference? They realized that the constraint wasn't actually suffering. They ate the rice and beans, and the world didn't end. Their relationships didn't fall apart. They didn't become less of a person. They just lived on less. And when they discovered that, something shifted. The fear around deprivation loosened a little bit. That's why doing this once is so powerful. It's not about the money you save in that moment, though that matters too. It's about the belief that rewires in your head. You now know, not theoretically, but in your bones, that you can live on less. You've done it, you've tasted it, and that knowledge changes everything.
Let me show you what this actually looks like over time, because the numbers are honestly kind of mind-blowing once you layer in some reality. Imagine two people, both making the same salary. Let's say $60,000 a year. Take home is roughly $4,500 a month, assuming taxes and all that. For a lot of people, especially early in their career, that's all going somewhere. Rent, food, bills, maybe a car. Zero surplus. Person A never does the constraint thing, never experiences that period where expenses drop below income. They get a 2% raise every year, which is pretty realistic. That's $900 extra a year, $75 extra bucks a month. Do you know what happens to that $75? It evaporates. Their lifestyle has inflated so much that they don't even notice it. After 10 years, they've been getting raises the entire time, but they have basically no accumulated wealth, maybe some emergency savings, but nothing meaningful. Person B does this once.
They move or downsize or whatever. Their expenses drop by $1,000 a month. They live that way for 4 or 5 months, and now they have $4,000 to $5,000. That's meaningful. That's a foundation. And here's the key. They don't spend it. They keep living at that lower level, and they keep that rate. Then the raises come, 2%, whatever it is. Now that raise is actually accumulated because their living expenses are locked in below their income. After 5 years, that person has $40,000 to $50,000 more than person A. After 10 years, the gap has widened to the point where person A is basically still stuck in the same place, while person B has a down payment on a house, or an investment account, or real options. That's not genius. That's not luck. That's just not spending the surplus. But, and this is the part that gets me, the longer time goes on, the more powerful this becomes. Because once you have $30,000 saved, you start making money on that money. You put it somewhere sensible, it gets 3–4% returns. Now you're making $1,000 a year just from having been wise once. That's free money just flowing in because you made a decision years ago. And the psychological piece. Person B now has options. They can leave a bad job. They can take a risk on a side project. They can negotiate for better terms because they don't desperately need every paycheck. That freedom actually tends to create more income opportunities, which creates more surplus, which creates more wealth. It's this upward spiral that starts with one decision. I know what you're thinking, though. This sounds great, but I can't just move to the suburbs. I've got responsibilities. I like my lifestyle. Isn't this asking me to live miserably? And that's fair. That's the real objection. Nobody wants to live in deprivation, and frankly, you shouldn't have to. But here's the thing, and I think this is actually the secret part that changes everything. You don't need a dramatic constraint. You don't need to cut your life in half. You need to find one area where you can step back intentionally, temporarily, and create a small gap between income and expenses. Maybe it's moving for a year. Maybe it's cutting a subscription or two. Maybe it's cooking at home for a few months instead of eating out every day. Maybe it's taking public transit instead of using rideshare every day. Maybe it's staying with family for a season. Maybe it's just deciding not to upgrade your phone this cycle, or driving your car for 2 more years.
The actual mechanism doesn't matter. What matters is that you experience the reality of living below your income, see that it's actually survivable, and don't immediately inflate when the opportunity returns. Even $100 extra per month, if you don't spend it, becomes $1,200 a year. Over 5 years, that's $6,000. That's not life-changing in the moment, but that's $6,000 that teaches you something about yourself and creates a foundation that grows. And here's what I think is sneaky about this whole thing. Once you do it once, you start seeing that same mechanism everywhere. You start thinking differently about choices. A $1,000 raise doesn't automatically become a lifestyle upgrade. It becomes an option. A new job doesn't immediately result in new spending. It results in new possibilities. You've basically rewired the equation. The other thing that's true, most people, once they've accumulated some money, don't actually want to go back. There's a profound sense of safety that comes with having a buffer. And that buffer makes you less likely to spend recklessly, not because you're denying yourself, but because you realize the buffer is more valuable than the spending. So here's what I want to leave you with, because I think this is actually important. You might not realize it, but you've probably already done this. Maybe it was forced on you by circumstance. Maybe you moved back home for a bit, or you had a period of constraint you didn't choose. And you probably felt something in that period. Maybe relief, maybe stress, maybe just surprise at how normal life felt with less. That wasn't a fluke. That was you experiencing the actual mechanism of wealth building. And if you can recognize that, if you can take that knowledge and apply it intentionally, you're no longer a passenger in your own financial life. You're driving. It doesn't require drama. It doesn't require sacrifice that leaves you miserable. It just requires one conscious choice,
One period where you step back, live a little lighter, and prove to yourself that you can. Because once you know you can, once that belief settles into your bones, the whole game changes. You become someone who's building wealth, not someone who's waiting for it to happen to them. You become someone who's 2x ahead, not because you're earning some impossible amount, but because you've unlocked a mechanism that most people never even realize exists. So think about what that might look like for you. Not someday, not when you've got more money, because spoiler alert, that day might never come. Right now. What's one area where you could voluntarily step back just for a little while and create that gap? Where could you move or shift or adjust to experience what it feels like to actually accumulate something? That answer, whatever it is for you, that's where the story starts.